My name is Bert Sturdevant, 53 years old. I've been an industrial arts teacher in Pennsylvania for 32 years. This is my 33rd year coming up. So teaching primarily 7th through 12th grade industrial arts. They throw things at me sometimes that I may not have been trained for, like robotics and stuff like that. I'm not as good at the RC cars. Wood turning, I started it probably, 15, 18 years ago by myself because there was a couple wood lathes in our shop and the kids were like, "What's that? What can we do with that? Can I try that?" And I said, "Well, let me try it first." I'm a graduate of Fort LaBeouf, just like Mark was. We had probably one of the most prolific shop teachers in our area of the time, Rich Gamble. He was fantastic. Our projects, 9th through 12th grade, were pool tables, grandfather clocks, water beds. There was an airplane. There was a speedboat that finally got blown apart on Lake Erie one time. So we learned to make dust, and we learned to make a lot of it. Whole bedroom suits for your senior year. Things aren't that big anymore, but the wood lathe has really become popular in my classes. We spend a lot of time on them. I think we are running 9 lathes right now. Mismatch, hodgepodge of different things like that. So I really enjoy wood turning. I found the Presque Isle wood turners, 4 or 5 years ago, and probably my turning has exploded since then. I go to work, I work all day with the students, and then my wife doesn't see me for at least 2 hours after she gets home because I'm in my garage running one of my 5 lathes in my garage. So, and yes, I do sometimes run all 5 of them in the same evening depending on what projects I'm doing and running stuff through. So tonight we're here because we have this Platter project, and I want to show you just a couple before I even really start talking much more about it. This is one that I'm really liking and enjoying right now because I've gotten into studying the alcohol dyes, and I'm learning to play around with it. Plus, I'm trying to grow my knowledge of wood burning embellishment. Here's another one. It's a flower platter. So here's the why, maybe. So, okay. A little fish. Okay, you heard some chuckles there, and that's what I was hoping for. How about this guy? Okay, so you look around the room and you hear some chuckles, and you say to yourself, "That brings happiness." People enjoy that, sure. Sorry those ones weren't back when you came in because I wanted to have them up to show. This is a simple project. It's done with just a 1-inch cut-off piece of maple or whatever you want to use for wood. I first met this project through a class that was held by Presque Isle Woodturners. Any classes, and you guys have this Saturday thing? Come, because you're going to learn things. Every time you touch and somebody shows you how they do it, you might not do it the same way. Both ways may be perfectly fine, but every time you share with each other, it's going to be great. So the Duxburys, Jim and Rita Duxbury, I don't know if any of you have ever met them. We've had them at our club several times, and they are good friends of ours. I haven't seen them in a while. I hope I see them next year if I go down to the convention. But as a filler project for one of the other projects that we were doing on a 2-day session, they showed up with the heart and the oak leaf platters that you saw on the back there. Just out of the small, and they were smaller. My wife says I have to make everything bigger, faster, more colorful, whatever. So they were smaller. So I started doing those with some of the students at school, and they liked them. Then I had one young lady, she said, and everything for her was acorns, not acorns, candy corns. She said, "Can we make a candy corn?" And I said, "Well, let me think about it." So I came back in after the weekend, And I said, yeah, we can make a candy corn. So we made a candy corn, and that's Izzy, one of the ones that we graduated here 2 years ago. She is now finished with the basic training and is going on. Then I got to saying to myself, she got so much joy, and we had so much fun figuring that out. Why don't we do that for every student? Let them try a heart platter, let them try an acorn, or the acorn hadn't existed at that time. Let them try one of those, and then we'll go a step further, and we'll have them design their own platter. So we went to coloring books, or we went to Google images, and we pull up coloring book images, and that's what all these are just coloring book images. Some of them have been Xeroxed on a Xerox machine, but even the fish was, coloring book image. We've done a cat, coloring book image. We did the duck, you saw the duck. So the pumpkin. And the pumpkin I may have edited a little bit and stretched it to get it more to a round or an oval shape. Some of these, and I was talking to a couple folks before the meeting, and they're like, well, you turn that and then you cut it out. Well, on some of them we do, some of them we don't. Some of them you have to. Like that duck, his head won't stay on. I promise you. His head won't stay on. I turned 5 ducks and 1 duck head stayed on. Okay? So the flower, those petals will not stay on, and they'll come off and flying all over the place in multitudes if you cut it all the way out and then turn it. So we'll turn it, and then we'll cut it out, and we'll shape it a little bit more after. So after I get my pattern, then the next thing is, on the simple ones, the ones that are round, oval, something like that, you can pretty much measure and come up with a mathematical, reasonable center. For the acorn, center hole number 1, and we'll go over this. I drill a hole so I can grab it with my check. Center hole number 1, I started looking at it, and I didn't like where it was coming out on my profile. So then I went to number 2. And number 2, and I know it's number 2 because it's marked number 2, it was going to give me a pocket in here. Now, maybe that's desirable, but it wasn't in my case. So then with number 3, by just moving a 1/4 of an inch each way, then I was starting to get, and this may not be a traditional platter. You may not be perfectly the same thickness all the way through. But that's part of the fun of it. That's part of trying to get somebody to see something that they haven't seen and get joy out of it. Along the way, you're going to make your platter funnel, and you're going to make something that's too thin. And when you hold this one up, you can see that it's just too thin. So you just will have to experiment, and you can get out all kinds of gauges and everything else to mess with and measure, and I did starting out. But if I'm turning 2 or 3 platters in a 2 or 3 hour session in the garage, I don't want to do that. So what I've got for my setup here is I'm going to use a small chuck. This one's a Barracuda, that would have come from PSI. I also use a lot of the record powers. You'll find them in places like the Craft Supply. I don't work for them, but they do give us a pretty good discount in the school shop. So around $100 for something like that. I'm glad I have the Barracuda, because when I get to the duck, if you look at where I grab it on the back, it's so small. My Barracuda is the only one that goes that small. Then I'm going to use, I put an extension on. You see one here, and I'll pass one around. And it has on the end of it the part of a pen. I forgot to start that. I can only set it for 99 minutes, so I can't go any longer than that. Okay. I have a pen saver mandrel on the end of that. It's got bearings in it, but what it doesn't have the point from like my 60 degree. So, because I'm going to get so thin in the center, my 60 degree would make it so I had a hole through there. So there's one of those if you want to take a look at that. If you're into pen turning, you can use the same one. Do I have to use an extension? No, I don't. I could just use a mandrel saver, but I'm a big guy and I like to have lots of room to work, so I want to get that back a little bit. You want to watch if you start adding more than one extension, because then you'll start to get a little bounce and flex. But I don't have to run this in super tight. I just want it touching. What that's going to do for my students and myself even is it's going to reduce the chances of this getting spit out of that chuck. And anytime we can stop stuff from flying around the shop with 9 lathes running, we're going to do it, okay? The next thing, you know, he asked if I wanted a short tool rest. I'd rather have a little bit longer one because I'm a lazy turner and I'll probably have my arm out here like this, way out here at the end. So that works out good to help me steady. Things that we can do. We want to go to an overhead for, no, you're good right there. Things that we can do to try to make this a little bit safer. Rotate that around. I'm looking for my widest maximum point, which is going to be there. And I'm going to put a piece of tape. I don't want to go over that tape. Because if I do and I get my finger into that, that could be painful, okay? Another thing you can do is you can also take and put a little flag on there so that when I turn that on, if I get close, if I start going across that area, that little flag is going to tick me on the finger as long as I'm not moving really fast before I shove my hand right into it. Does that sound like it might be a good idea? Especially on the first couple that you want to do. And that's something that we're going to be focusing more on with the students this year. Oh, that reminds me, that one guy with the coloring and texturing we were talking about on the way down, his joke this year at the thing was moron. Call me moron. He wanted to put more finish on, more finish on, more finish on. I forget what his name was. Moron, moron. So I'm going to start just with a Now you can ask all you want. I might be able to tell you what the chisel is. You can ask me what the grind is on it, what the angle is on it, anything like that, and I'm going to hand it to you. Tell you to take a picture of it, make a tracing of it, go home and get your protractor out and measure it, because I have no idea. I have no idea. I got something that works. Some of them I got by just sheer discovery. Some of them I got because somebody else may have turned or ground it for me. Some of them I got from my young man at school that is in tool and die, and he just stands there at the grinder and just does this. And he does a 40-40 grind, that one that Ashley Hardwood does by eye. So we're going to go ahead, and I don't have RPMs on here. I just want something that's comfortable. I'm going to keep my hand, and that's why I like the longer tool rest, because I'm grounded back here. And I just want to scrape that a little bit just to clean it off so that I know that I'm kind of flat. Most of this stuff does not have a lot of rough cut showing on it. It's been pre-planed, which is great for us. I have to define where I want to grab it when I flip it over. I'm going to do all the work on the bottom of my platter. It's going to be finished because I won't be able to work on that side on the lathe again once I'm done. So anything I want to do with it before I flip it, I have to be done with. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say I'm going to go right about there. You're welcome to take measurements off of any of them back there that you'd like. I'm probably going to go down maybe about 1/4 of an inch. We'll shut that off so that you can see it. So it's just under 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to go in and open that up. I'm more confident about turning in here, inside that circle, with this removed, because I'm pushing directly towards my chuck. I'm not very confident about turning this out here without that there. Okay, so I would recommend, especially for your first through 10th attempts, that you put it out there. Now, I want to bring this down flat. I know what that did. There's an O-ring there, and that O-ring sucked back in. So all we got to do is make sure that's tight all the way, and we'll go there again. I know why it did that. I'm going to bring this flat. So at any time, if you don't have the same or similar chisel, or you don't have the comfort level with that chisel, we can go to scrapers, and you can go, just watch, because you're probably going to hold a scraper in here like this. So I can achieve similar cuts with a variety of different tools. I'm not one of those persons, especially with students in school that are learning, I'm going to go with the tool that they're most comfortable with, because they're going to be more comfortable. I'll probably go to a little bit smaller gouge, and I'm going to come in here. Maybe I want to stay with that bigger one. And I'm going to bring that shoulder back. I don't want to make that a square corner. I want to have it rounded, because that's going to be easier for sanding. I haven't worried too much about out here. It's still proud where it was. Now we start knocking that down. And I would probably go more with the point of my gouge. Some people like to start out here, but you might find that to be bumpy. So I'm going to use more of my point. And you got to cut all the way to the out of it. That tape's going to double, because it's going to tell you where you are at the end of that. So you'll have to find the tool. And sometimes I find if I hold it and roll it back, I can have better control of it too. You have to remember, I put that tape out there. That's a long ways out. So, and right now it's going to look really rough, and I'm all right with that. You can try. Some of us can do this and glide. And I've got it bandsawed out to the rough shape, but I'm going to have some tear out on that a little bit and have to go from there. Mess around, try a couple different chisels, see which one works better for you. I'll give it a little swoop at the end there, but I'm pulling it across to try and control my depth there. So we can see that we're starting to get a curve, and I'm going to take that quite a bit more. Another thing you can try, if you want to see more of what your shape is there, change the color on your lathe bed. So let's take a look at that for a second. Okay, and I'm going to have to tape that down because it's going to get caught and flop. So look at that. And then look at that. I mean, and for different people, the optical look is different, but it could make the difference. And it might not be blue. It might have to do with the color of shavings that are coming off. Now that I can take and shake off after I build up some chips on there and return back to my view. Does that give you a better view, do you think, for your video? There could be such a thing as this one's a bad example of a grind. Don't worry, we brought reinforcements. We're not even cutting 10% of the time there, so my chisel shouldn't get dull cutting all that air. So now I've got that, and that tape might be causing us trouble seeing that. I've got that like that, and it's very rough. And then I've got a big, now what I want to do is I want to round this and blend, not taking any more here, but taking and rounding it into there to give more of an appearance of, and because I've removed some material, I can angle my tool rest a little bit and get it in closer. But I want to check, if I'm counting on that blue tape, I want to make sure that I didn't move it this way and give myself a false sense of security. Imagine having 9 of these going at the same time with all that chatter. I count my blessings when I look around and see these on. With all that chatter, somebody would be spitting that out of there. Okay, so I could keep working that and getting a little bit more round and maybe even get it down another little bit there. We have a full menu of possible things that we can go over tonight. CW wanted to make sure that we included as much as possible. So the more we spend on one thing, the less we'll see of other things, because we also have possibly doing a little bit with fire sanding, to give you a quick taste of that. And then I would most prefer to spend some time on how how I'm getting into the wood burning and the alcohol dyes. And then if you want to know more about the acorn spit I have in my cases, which is a water-based dye, if you want to reference the Presque Isle Woodturners YouTube, I spent quite a bit of time up there on stuff with the unicorn spit. So I'm gonna leave that there for now, and I'm going to take my safety net. Well, no, not yet. I can do a little bit more. Find my, the longer I can convince them to leave that in place, the less gray my beard gets. So I'm just going in with a real small, thin parting tool and setting a depth there. Now I suppose I'll be taking that away. So we were really fortunate last year. I wrote and we got a grant from the AAW. Any of you that belong to the AAW. Their grant program is real, and we got a grant for $1,500 to buy wood burners and put on a one-day youth turning program. But we made sure we wrote into it so that we got enough material so that all the students, because we had 15 or 16? 15. There, and some of the Presque Isle wood turners came down. And then we used them as living examples to help the others in class through the same project, and we saw some amazing results. So now I'm going to go in and just clear out this. Now this is where, if you're nervous, I mean, it'll all come out with the point of one of these gouges, but if you're less experienced and you're having trouble with that, most everybody's got a scraper, and you can get right in there and feel more comfortable with a scraper and get an okay finish. Again, most of I have 2 or 3 that can turn and sharpen, and that's the only way they can turn, where they are doing little to no sanding when they finish something. And they're very proud of that, and I'm very proud of them for being able to do that. The ones that get that good are usually the laziest because they don't want to sand. And then I'll even have them come back in and clean this up some with that. And it's going to be rough. Our biggest thing here is this has got to be, inside here, has got to be a 90 degree, unless you're using some sort of a chuck that has a flare on it, then you may want to cut that flare. It has to be a 90 degree. It can't be this way or it's not going to stay in your chuck. And it really can't be the other way unless you have that dovetail chuck that I was trying to remember the name of. So, how many of you like to sand? Unanimous. Try and convince a high school student that they want to sand. So,
you gotta see this. You gotta see his setup here. Just let me show you what he's got.
We'll start with the 60 degree or 60 grit.
Hey Bert, step out of the frame just.
Oh.
Okay, so we got. Can you turn that a little bit so they can see the?
Turn what?
Your cart.
Oh, I just put all my finishes and everything else on there. Right now, I'm chasing that tail on that one burner so I don't smash it. So we'll start with the 60. I don't recommend turning the lathe on to try and do this. Please. Do it manually. Where it was extra rough out here, 60 degree, I'm going to carve the rest of it. I'm not going to get real close to the center, but I'm going to this piece has some pretty good figure in it. 60 degrees is going to help even that in and break that in. Reverse in direction. $80 grit. Some people are going to shake their heads because I'm just skipping all over the place. 150 grit. Reversing it. And unless it's the one I'm going to beat Mark with at the fair, I'm probably going to stop at 150 grit. You can go higher, and if you're going to alcohol dye, we'll talk a little bit about that as we go. Alcohol dye is not forgiving on poor sanding. It will never cover it up, and it will accentuate it all the way. Now, for the interior part and to get a blend, I will turn it on, probably turn it down, and then speed it up as I feel comfortable. I can sand in here. If the wood is continuous around and my paper doesn't go out past the edges, I can sand that. And a 9th grader can understand that. And if they don't, after they whack their finger the first time, they'll understand it. So, it's nice to have lathes that you can control the speed on. Some of ours have that capability. So I can go ahead and sand this. I can sand in here, and I want to sand it, especially in the center, because that's where people are going to look to see if you did good on your sanding. Oops. See if you did good on your sanding. So I'm going to give this a little bit of 100 grit. I don't go... And then you really want to work to form your sandpaper so that it's round, so that I'm not getting out of the edge there. And then I can work that. My sanding's probably going to be a little bit lackluster tonight because I'm not giving a clinic on sanding. So I get that with a little bit of 100. Unless you're going to go, you know, you got more grits of sandpaper that you're going to go, we've been running them with the sander, the palm sander at 150 on the outside, and then maybe up to 280 with the sandpaper on while it's running on the inside. And we're getting a pretty decent blend. You can go ahead and go with screens. You can use your small orbital sander, but not while it's running on the outside edges, because that's electric cords, that's sandpaper and sander going around those false corners. I would not do that. The only orbital sanders I'm finding are not going to work, especially on the inside, are the square ones, because they just won't sand an arc for you. And again, my sanding is probably not going to be 100%. This will probably be a test piece. But keep track of where that is at all times as it's spinning. And that's not horrible. It could be better. Again, you remember I said anything that we're doing to this side has to be done before we flip it and chuck it the other way. So I like to throw a little boy, that's really boring slow. Throw a sinding ring in there. Or you can throw a whole series of rings in there if we want. I know I threw one of those guys in. I have everything from the shop in here. A little decorating elf. Because what better way to hide a little bit of poor sanding, but with a little bit of texture.
Can you hold that tool up again? And just hold it in frame?
Oh, decorating elf?
Yeah, here, just hold it in frame. Yeah,
Oh, there.
yeah, there you go.
They come with 2 or 3 different tips. These ones don't even have bearings, so you're running them at low speeds when you do it. It's like a quick, easy step.
Bert, hold it over your hand, underneath the, there you go.
Yeah, and hold it in frame. Yeah, yeah, there you go.
My other right.
Yeah.
Where do you get those from?
I think you can get them from that craft supply. There's a wide variety of people. It's a Henry Taylor Tools Limited decorating elf. They come out of the UK, England. That's one simple way, easy way, fun way to do it. Somewhere there, oh, it's back in the other tub in the back. I've got Sorby with me, and I've got Jacob makes fun of me. That's my one young man that does so well, because they make the tools for the guys my age that can afford to try them.
Bert, could you pass
I can.
that tool around, please?
Oh, I can pass that tool around. And I forgot I was going to pass this around. This is what I started with. I drilled that hole where I grabbed it first with my chuck, just on a drill press. A little bit bigger than what the size of my chuck is. I learned quite a bit at the conference about chucks and some crazy things I never considered until they were said, but those are for another time, about how to make it so that your chuck doesn't leave marks that you have to try and sand out later. So as long as I cut that square, I don't recommend it, but somebody with pretty good skill could do a lot of this. But I'm gonna go back to my same setup. I'm gonna find my parts. I'm gonna slip that in there, bring it in, snug it, Bring my tool rest in. Now, let's check our tape. There's no sense in using it if you're not going to adjust it. Check our tape. Now, it's going to be a lot more difficult for me to convince that board to jump out of that with that there. I'm not saying it's impossible, because anything's possible, I suppose. See where we are? The children like to turn everything at 1,000 miles an hour because they can. So I'm just cutting on the side, opening it up, experimenting, twisting a little bit, seeing where the chip is satisfying, I guess. You might go to a bigger one and use it more as a scraper. You see how I am using my forearm back here on, I don't know, on the tool rest. I'm taking a lot of bounce out of my chisel by doing that, I think. That could be just me. If anybody has any comments or questions or something, please don't be afraid to speak up. That chatter would be a warning sign that something's coming out real soon if I wasn't using this. Does that make sense? Normally, you would find that unacceptable to hear that kind of chatter. So, know that hopefully I'm not giving myself a false confidence, but we've done more than 100 of these, I think, by now at school. Give us a little different view. Might help me gauge my thickness a little bit more there. You may want to just make sure if you're using a scraper and you're coming on with both hands heading into there, that your red's off, isn't it? That you're anchoring on your tool rest down low so that you don't slide up and in. And then we've got a little bit of an issue going here where it's still flat. Some students, depending on how nervous they are, they might form that more with the sander, or they may come in and try and take a little bit of that off, using an approach where I'm rolling back through into it. Now it's not going to stop clicking until I get out to my tape. If I push back a little bit at the end, that'll give me a little bit of a curl, a back curl. And that's one of the places where I'm not worried about even thickness. Again, we're making a whimsical fun thing here. So I'm looking over the edge, pretending I can gauge by eye, which I might be able to, or not. Or get your calipers out, and you can see where you are. 3/8 of an inch maybe. If you want your first couple to be successful, leave them a little thick. It's okay. It's what's going to make you happy. And now I have a lot of chatter in that, but you know what grit I'm going to start with on my sanding, right? So, I mean, I worked real hard to try and figure this out so that high school kids could have fun with this and be successful. So, again, your level of, make sure you really tip that out so that you're not worried about hitting there, because we're just working inside. If I'm not using the tape, then get rid of it so you don't have a false sense of anything. I've taken it away, so I need to make sure my pressure's going into the chuck. Okay? Watch really pulling hard back on it. I'm probably going to be more push cutting across this way. And it's okay to go light. One of the things that a lot of my students, once they figure out how fast they can take material away with these gouges by adjusting until they find that corner, that edge. Maybe it's riding the bevel, maybe it's not. Some of them never get that idea. And they find out that that's also the way that they can get thin. And as long as they're following safety precautions, I'll let them try to go as thin as they care to, as long as they're not running it. A lot will find that going in with a scraper is their answer here. We passed a sample around. One of the biggest things is to get them to understand not to lean hard right in the very center, because that'll make them be thin, way, way fast. And I want to try and blend that so I don't have to sand as much. So I'll provide my students with whatever sandpaper is necessary from where they're at with their turning. Those that are a little bit more advanced in their turning, some of them even make fun of me because we call 50 grit paper the 50 grit chisel. It's their finishing chisel before they start their sanding. And you know what, that's all right. Because if they want to get away from that and sand less, they'll practice more with their chisel and they'll get better with their cuts. I can't force them to do that. They have to figure it out. We don't want to turn this on while we're running it. In fact, on the smaller lathes, if I see that they're sanding with the sanders, I will probably go over and unplug it for them. Sanded enough that you've taken out any scars or chatter, and there's a little bit in that, but I can grab that later. And I go to the next one. Am I doing all right? Is there any concerns?
I would say you're at about an hour, and I know you've got a lot of other content.
Okay.
So just balance that.
Okay. We're almost done. All right, so that gets us pretty good. I would probably do a little bit more, definitely, if I was giving it to my mother. There's plugs around here somewhere. So I've got a small, I'd call it a knife sander. All kinds of brands of them out there available. This is the Harbor Freight $50 edition. Actually, I have two of them when we're not doing them at school. I run one with 80 grit and I run one with 120 grit, I think. And I'll just go it unplugged itself. confusing myself with power switches. So the kids would not do these without this because it was just too much. We would use the drum sander in here and maybe the drum sander here just to take out those marks. Then they'll go in and they'll spend a little bit of time sanding, and then I would probably go back and break those corners just lightly. All right? But that's basically how I would get the youngsters to do that. While I have that up, so this flower one that I do, I got one here that's sanded already and one that's not. This one I even threw a little burn on. I would turn this, I would leave it solid. These cuts were made after I turned it because these are going to snap off, especially on the side grain here. So I turn it, then I go in and cut it. Now the problem with going in and cutting this or going in and cutting the duck, any of them, you have to understand if you're using a bandsaw, you need to rock that so that it's laying on the table. You need to rock that so it's laying on the table and you're coming in flat like that. If you come in like this with this sitting flat on the table, as soon as it touches that blade, bam. And as soon as it pulls and moves something fast and hard, you got to think, if that is my finger going in there, okay? I have a flat thumb from that years ago. So you could try that. It could be safer if these don't drop down into your miter gauge groove. Okay, so our one bandsaw at school, they would. I will, for anybody that's not confident on this cut, do it. Or I'll send them to the scroll saw. Because if they're a tough guy or gal enough to cut their finger off with a scroll saw, have at it, okay? So once I get done with my cutting, then I just use this knife sander again. And I'll just do 2 of those so you can see where I'm going at with that. So any of these patterns that you want to try, you're welcome to. And I think he has a digital copy of them that he'll probably put up with the video if he hasn't put them up somewhere before already. But
You have that backrest on that belt sander groove,
oh yes, I have the backrest because that adds thickness and I want to slip into that groove. So plus I'm all right with it rounding the edge of my platters just a little bit. What did I do wrong?
No, he's just saying how tight the grain is.
Oh yeah, that well, and I purposely pick those out when I want to do the alcohol dyes, and I've been playing with double dyeing and all kinds of stuff like that. All right, you basically understand what I try to do when I try to achieve the turning on that. I don't know.
Can you repeat the question?
Can you do this with greenwood? I would say that it probably you're going thin enough that you would be relieving a lot of the stress for the cracking. I just don't know how much it would warp, what you would end up with in the end. I am not much of a greenwood turner. I do quite a bit with air dried, but I am not much of a greenwood turner. You want to have an intermission? We can have an intermission. Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Anybody else want tickets for your raffle? Now's your chance, see Bill.
Am I doing all right? Thanks.
He did, I know. CW, how many copies did you bring?
I brought 4.
Okay, so which one is in the competition for chips?
Well, it's the one that spins the longest.
No, you gotta pick one.
It's a collection. So whichever one spins the
Just setting up the next round. We're burning and turning and burning tonight, so. Uh-oh, Oop, yeah, that looks good. Need an adapter.
What do you think? Good, Bert, good.